In September 2017, there was an attempted constitutional coup. Uhuru's presidency was nullified. Then we were told that there was no doubt that Uhuru had won the election. However, the process of announcing his victory was flawed. That's what we were told. Because Form 34A was signed using a black pen and not a blue pen, the process was not followed. And these arguments were laughable, in my view. Because process was not followed, Uhuru's presidency was taken away from him. Then we were ordered to elect a president again. This gave Raila Odinga a second chance. Maybe they wanted him to win, but Raila boycotted the election. In the end, what was nullified became elected. It was a total waste of time, and we must never forget that. But we must also never forget one curious incident. One day before the October 26th election, Maraga convened the Supreme Court. They were meant to decide on whether the election should go on or not. Chebukati had told us that IEBC could not deliver a credible election. And some nondescript IEBC commissioner called Apombe, or whatever her name was, had resigned and disappeared into exile. All this had put into question the credibility of the October 26th election. Now, if on October 25th, Maraga had stopped the election through the Supreme Court, today we would be having an interim government, and the constitutional coup against Uhuru Kenyatta would have succeeded. In fact, a bill establishing this interim government had already been drafted. What's my point here? Although the constitutional coup against Uhuru Kenyatta did not succeed on October 25th and whatever happened in September, there is a new constitutional coup in the making, and the coup makers have not changed. Consider a few hypotheses with me. This week, Maraga gave an address to a conference at Oxford. And in this conference, he served notice without serving notice. He told us that Parliament and the executive had failed Kenyans. And as a political scientist, this is what I understood Maraga to say. Parliament and Uhuru must go for Kenya to get rid of corruption and rise. In fact, Maraga implied that Uhuru is a product of a rigged election, and as such, he is illegitimate and he operates a busted government, an illegitimate government. But the most important thing that Maraga said at Oxford was this: the Parliament has failed to pass the gender law, and as a result, Parliament must be dissolved. Then there was one more disturbing thing that Maraga said. He declared that no one should expect animal farm justice from the Supreme Court. Animal farm justice is one where all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, what Maraga was telling Parliament and the Oxford people is the following: that he will dissolve Parliament. He is going to do it because he's the only one who has the powers to dissolve it. And he'll do it because in Kenya, all animals are equal, and Parliament cannot be more equal than Kenyans. But I must pose a question here. Can Maraga really dissolve Parliament? In my view, he will do more than dissolving Parliament. He'll dissolve Parliament and order a fresh presidential election. If he nullified the presidential election and we took him nowhere, he will dissolve Parliament and order a fresh election, and he will take him nowhere. And on this, he is not wrong. We have broken the ceiling glass of innocence in this country. Things that were an abomination have become normal. And this is what Maraga is riding on. Raila swore himself in, we gave him a handshake instead of charging him with treason. Maraga did the unthinkable, we gave him military protection when he was fragile. If he sends Uhuru home, we will give him a medal and turn him into an international hero in retirement. This is how messed up we have become, and that is the logic that Maraga will use to dissolve Parliament, in my view. Now, I will explain the constitutional coup and how Maraga will dissolve parliament and shorten Uhuru's term. Remember that our constitution is new, and in order for us to migrate from the old constitution to the new constitution, a number of laws had to be passed. There were 48 in number. And because of the importance of these laws to the new constitution, the drafters of our constitution put in place a very tight roadmap. Then they planted this roadmap in Article 261 of the Constitution. They declare that if any of the 48 laws are not passed in the stipulated time, the Chief Justice shall advise the President to dissolve Parliament, and the President shall dissolve Parliament. We have passed 47 of the 48 laws, but Parliament has refused to pass the 48th law. That is the law on gender role. And this is what Maraga will use to dissolve Parliament, the refusal to pass the 48th law. But there is a process here. And unfortunately, the entire of this process has been followed and has been exhausted. In 2017, the High Court ordered Parliament to pass this law, and Parliament refused. The Court of Appeal has also ruled on this matter, and Parliament is on the wrong. Now the file is on Maraga's desk, and the Constitution does not require Maraga to convene the Supreme Court or to consult anyone. In fact, the Constitution orders him to dissolve Parliament if all mechanisms have been exhausted. Now, given that Maraga is a legal fundamentalist who does not believe in animal farm justice, he will follow the law and he will dissolve Parliament. This is what he was telling us in his Oxford address. But this will be the first part of the constitutional coup against Uhuru Kenyatta. The second part of the constitutional coup will be executed by the Supreme Court. They will send Uhuru home after dissolving Parliament. Consider my hypothesis here. For starters, Uhuru arrested Justice Mwilu. She must be angry and furious if she is human. Then the only judges that supported Uhuru in the Supreme Court were fixed without protection. J.B. Ojwang was suspended, and Jokidongo escaped suspension through prayers and tact. And if she is human also, she is not happy wherever she is. The Supreme Court, therefore, has no empathy at all for Uhuru Kenyatta. If Parliament is dissolved, a question will be posed to this hostile court. And according to the Constitution, this is a question that they will be posed. That the election of the President is meant to happen on the same day as that of Parliament. If Parliament is dissolved and a new election is held, should the election of the President happen on the same day as that of the new election of Parliament? Now, if Maraga rules that the new parliamentary election is held in September 2019, for instance, should a presidential election also happen on the same day as required by the Constitution? This question can only be answered by the Supreme Court. And if you pose it to a hostile Supreme Court, they will order that a fresh presidential election be held on the same day as the election of the dissolved Parliament. If Maraga sends the MPs back to the ballot, the Supreme Court, which is hostile, will send Uhuru back to the ballot as well. But there is one more thing. The Supreme Court will be asked to rule on whether Uhuru Kenyatta is eligible to run or not in the new election. And a hostile Supreme Court will rule that Uhuru has done his second term already and he cannot run, especially because he's done 2.5 years. These people will send Uhuru home, and that is how the constitutional coup will happen.